I never expected my neighborhood to turn into a battlefield. But as I stood on my lawn, watching my fire-breathing dragon spew flames into the night sky, I knew there was no going back. The HOA president, Mr. Whitmore, was frozen in sheer terror at the end of my driveway, his clipboard slipping from his trembling hands. Behind him, a crowd had gathered neighbors, with their mouths wide open, some clutching their phones, no doubt calling the fire department. But the dragon wasn't attacking them. No, it was standing tall in the very spot where my harmless scarecrow once stood before Whitmore slapped me with a fine, forcing me to take it down. Well, he wanted me to remove the scarecrow, and I did. I just happened to replace it with something better. The beast's metal wings gleamed, catching the glow of its own flames. Its motion sensors twitched as it calculated its next move. And, oh, it wasn't done yet. A sudden gust of wind fanned the flames, creating an eerie shadow of the dragon against Whitmore's house. He took a step back, then another. His eyes darted to mine, full of panic. "What have you done?" he screamed. I grinned. The night air was thick with smoke and the sharp scent of burning fuel. My dragon's throat glowed, heating up once more as it detected another movement, the approaching flashing lights of emergency vehicles. I barely had time to process what I'd done. The crowd had doubled, and now the HOA board members stood beside Whitmore, their faces a mix of horror and outrage. "Deactivate it now," Whitmore shrieked. I folded my arms. "You find me for a harmless scarecrow. I figured I'd make something a little more impactful." The dragon hissed, releasing a small jet of fire into the air. Someone yelped, stumbling backward. Then, in a blur of chaos, the fire department arrived. Sirens wailed. Firefighters jumped from their trucks, eyes darting between my mechanical creation and the growing hysteria. One of them, a towering man with the name Henderson stitched into his jacket, marched straight to me. "Is this yours?" he asked. His voice was calm, but his eyes held disbelief. I nodded, still grinning despite the tension. "Impressive, huh?" Henderson ran a hand down his face. "You're about to be in a world of trouble, kid." Whitmore saw his chance. He puffed out his chest, stepping forward like a man about to deliver his greatest speech. "This reckless display of defiance will not stand in our neighborhood," he bellowed. Just then, my dragon's head turned sharply. Its motion sensors locked onto Whitmore. Its throat glowed again. The crowd gasped, and before anyone could react, the dragon fired. Flames erupted, dancing wildly in the night air. The crowd screamed, stumbling backward as my dragon unleashed its fiery wrath. But it wasn't aiming at Whitmore. Instead, the fire engulfed the HOA rulebook, which had fallen from his hands in the chaos. Whitmore watched in horror as the book curled and blackened, its sacred HOA commandments turning to ash before his eyes. "No!" he shrieked, lunging forward like he could somehow save the burning remnants of his precious regulations. I just stood there, watching the scene unfold like a twisted movie. Firefighters rushed to contain the flames, blasting their hoses at my creation. Steam billowed into the night, creating a chilling fog that made my dragon look even more sinister. Then, through the mist, Henderson glared at me. "You are in so much trouble." I shrugged. "I followed the HOA's rules. They said no scarecrows." I removed it. Whitmore whirled around, face redder than the dragon's flames. "You knew what you were doing." Before I could respond, a single voice rose from the crowd. "This is actually kind of amazing." The words hung in the air. All eyes turned toward the speaker, Mrs. Jenkins, the retired schoolteacher from 3 houses down. Her eyes sparkled with amusement as she stared at my dragon, seemingly impressed. Then, another voice. "Yeah, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen in this boring neighborhood." A ripple of murmurs spread through the crowd. People exchanged glances. Some nodded. A few even smiled. Whitmore noticed, and that's when his panic turned to fury. "You think this is funny? This is an outrage. This is a direct attack on our community's values." He spun back toward me, pointing a shaking finger. "I'll have you banned from this neighborhood if it's the last thing I do." And just as he finished that sentence, my dragon's motion sensors twitched. It had detected something again. It turned its head. Its throat glowed. And before anyone could react, the dragon fired once more. The dragon's throat glowed, brighter than before. The crowd gasped, some stepping back while others leaned in, as if mesmerized. Then boom! The dragon unleashed a towering plume of fire. But this time, it wasn't random. It scorched the HOA sign at the entrance of the neighborhood. The plastic melted, warping, and curling into itself. The once bold letters of "A Community of Order and Excellence," distorting beyond recognition. Silence. Absolute silence. Then, cheering. At first, just a few voices. Then more. Then a roar of approval. Whitmore whirled around, eyes darting between the now destroyed sign and the growing number of neighbors who were clapping, laughing, cheering me on. Mrs. Jenkins, ever the rebel, pumped a fist into the air. "Down with the hoe!" I choked back a laugh. Whitmore looked ready to collapse, his face twisted in shock. "You people are encouraging this?" Some nodded. Some shrugged. One brave soul even muttered, "Honestly, this place could use a little excitement." Whitmore turned back to me, shaking with rage. "You think this is over? You think this is funny?" I smirked. "Oh, Whitmore," I said, voice dripping with amusement. "I think this is just getting started." And that's when I saw it. Something strange flickering inside my dragon's chest. Its sensors had picked up something new. The metal word. The gears twitched. My stomach dropped. Something was about to happen. The dragon trembled. Its chest whirred violently, something sparking deep within its metal heart. The crowd noticed. Murmurs of uncertainty spread. Whitmore, still red-faced, wiped sweat from his forehead and snarled, "Whatever nonsense you've done, end it now!" But it was too late. The dragon shuddered, its wings twitching, and then, with an ear-splitting crack, its chest burst open. A flood of glowing embers poured out, swirling like a fiery storm. For a second, everyone froze, watching as the embers danced into the night. Then they rose. Like a phoenix being born from the wreckage, the embers took shape floating high above us, twisting, spiraling, creating something new. And as the last ember flickered out, revealing what it had formed, the crowd gasped. Because there, etched in burning orange light against the darkness, was the unmistakable outline of a scarecrow. A glowing, fiery scarecrow, hanging in the sky like a defiant legend. Whitmore staggered back, his eyes wide with disbelief. I took one step forward, staring up at my creation, feeling the heat pulse against my skin. And then, as if acknowledging its victory, the scarecrow's ember eyes turned toward Whitmore. The light flashed. Whitmore shrieked. And with one final burst of brilliance, the scarecrow vanished, leaving nothing but a trail of curling smoke. Silence hung thick. Then, the cheers exploded. Whitmore, defeated. The HOA, powerless. The neighborhood, forever changed. I turned to Henderson, who just shook his head, muttering, "You've got guts, kid." And as I stood there, grinning at the embers floating through the air, I knew I had won. I thought it was over. That Whitmore would crawl back into whatever HOA-shaped cave he lived in and finally leave me alone. I was wrong. The very next morning, just as the embers had cooled and whispers of legend spread through the neighborhood, a new horror arrived. A lawsuit. A thick stack of papers slammed onto my doorstep, delivered with the smug satisfaction of Whitmore himself. I picked it up, flipping through the nonsense legal jargon. HOA versus me. The charges? Endangering the community, destruction of property. And get this acts of terrorism. I burst out laughing. Whitmore's face twisted. "We'll see how funny you think this is when you're sitting in court," he sneered. I wiped away a tear of laughter. You really just don't know when to quit, do you? But then something changed. The neighbors army stepped forward. Mrs. Jenkins, holding a petition. Henderson, cracking his knuckles like he was ready for war. The rest? Standing behind me, eyes burning with defiance. One by one, voices rose. "We stand with the dragon." Whitmore's smugness vanished. He looked around his own neighbors, his own community, turning on him. And that's when it hit him. This wasn't just about fire. It was about freedom. He had lost control. And the real battle had just begun. Whitmore's face twitched. The neighborhood stood behind me, united like an army on the verge of rebellion. I saw him grip his clipboard tighter, his knuckles white. This neighborhood was built on order. You people don't understand what you're inviting. Mrs. Jenkins scoffed, waving her petition. "Oh, we know exactly what we're doing." Whitmore took a step back, then another. The power was shifting, was losing his grip, and he knew it. And then it happened. A new motion sensor alert flickered across my dragon's chest. Everyone turned, looking toward the street corner where a line of HOA enforcement officers had appeared. They marched forward in matching blue blazers, clipboards gleaming, ready to reinstate control. Whitmore grinned. "You thought you could fight the HOA alone? Guess what? This isn't over." I stared at the approaching brigade, my fingers itching to activate the dragon one more time. The crowd held their breath, waiting for the next move, waiting for the final battle. And as the sun rose, casting fire-like rays across my creation, I knew one thing. I wasn't backing down. The sun hung low, casting golden light across the street where my dragon stood, its metal body still smoldering from last night's rebellion. But now the HOA enforcers had arrived. A dozen of them, marching forward, clipboards tucked beneath their arms like weapons. Whitmore smirked, stepping forward. "This neighborhood will be restored to order, immediately." The crowd stiffened, their excitement from the night before turning into tension. And then Mrs. Jenkins took a step forward. No, one word. So simple, so powerful, it froze Whitmore in place. Then Henderson stepped forward, then another neighbor, then another, until the whole street stood against the HOA, their eyes fierce, their stance unyielding. Whitmore's smirk vanished. The air was thick with electricity. a battlefield forming not with fists, but with defiance. And as my dragon's sensors flickered, detecting movement, I knew this battle was about to get a whole lot hotter. The street was silent. Whitmore stood rigid, his HOA enforcers flanking him, clipboards poised like weapons. I could feel the weight of the neighborhood behind Memi Army, my allies, every soul who had had enough of the HOA's tyranny. The air hummed with tension. And then Whitmore did it. He reached for my dragon. I barely had time to react before his hands gripped the metal frame, his fury boiling over. "I am done playing games with you," he roared. "This thing is coming down." The crowd gasped, but they didn't move. They waited, as if knowing something was about to happen. And oh, something did. Because the moment Whitmore touched my dragon, its motion sensors kicked in. Its wings twitched. Its throat glowed. And then, a final explosion of fire erupted. Not an attack. Not destruction. No, this was a display. A towering pillar of flames, rising into the sky, illuminating the entire neighborhood in brilliant gold. It was a statement. It was a legend being written. Whitmore stumbled back, his clipboard falling to the pavement. His enforcers? Frozen. And then the neighbors cheered. They cheered for the dragon. They cheered for defiance. They cheered for freedom. Whitmore was defeated, his HOA overthrown in spirit, their grip shattered. I turned to him, the fiery glow reflecting in my eyes. "Guess you should have just let me keep the scarecrow." He said nothing. And with that, the dragon let out one final burst of flame, sealing its legend forever.